All right, welcome everybody. I will go ahead and call the September Dover Trails and Recreation Committee meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. Public comments. Does anyone have any public comments? All right, I will go ahead and make one. So tonight's agenda, we're probably going to set a land speed record here. Well, knock on wood to get through this stuff, but really just trying to give you guys all some general updates about things that we've talked about in the past. We don't currently have any large proposals to talk about. We will have some things moving forward here after the next couple of select board meetings, hopefully, but just wanted to give you guys some general updates on things that we had been working on and have talked about previously. Okay. So we will, any other public comments before we move forward? All right, perfect. Additions or changes to the agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to add or change? Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the August 11th meeting. Sarah makes a motion. Can I have a second?
I second.
Patricia, second. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, all right, we're good. All right. All set there. So to start, let's have a brief conversation, just so that everybody's aware how this works. Okay, so like when people bring us proposals for things, I think there was a misunderstanding that we just kind of get to name who does that work and things like that. It's basically just a reminder that our department does follow the purchasing policy for the town of Dover. Shannon sent that to me and I meant to print it out. So it is that anything under $5,000 we can buy, correct, Shannon? Sorry, put you on the spot. I know.
It's hard to type and talk. Yes, up to 4,999. I think we can move forward. Trying to pull it up while I talk.
Yeah.
I think we have to have 2 written estimates, but now you're making me doubt myself, and that's
Okay.
why I sent it to you.
Yeah, as well.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to see the wrong thing, even though we just looked at it.
Totally understand. Purchasing policy.
If only someone had sent it to you.
I know, right? Okay, here it is. $500 to $4,999. At least 2 verbal quotes should be documented by the department head, including a description of the work to be performed, the vendor, the date, and the amount of the quote. Department heads are empowered to make a selection when outlining or when utilizing verbal quotes. So anything between $500 and $4,999, I can actually make a decision on that and then just tell the select board, hey, this is what we're doing. Okay. 5,000 to 10,000, at least 2 written quotes shall be requested, documented, and filed, including the name of vendor, date, and amount of quote. Department head shall review the written quotes and make a recommendation to the select board. So anything over $5,000, even though we don't necessarily, need to get, we don't need to go out and get a ton of bids. We just need to have at least 2 bids in writing to make a recommendation to that select board, okay, for that project or purchase to happen. Sarah, you have a question.
I just want to point out there are times we are not able to get 2.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean we can't go forward. It just means that is the goal, is at least 2.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so like when we made a purchase of let's say our laptops, right? And Apple has a pretty strict policy as to like how they price things across the board. So it didn't really make sense to get quotes, from 2 different companies because they were going to be exactly the same. So that's what Sarah is referencing there. Over $10,000, we shall solicit 3 written bids unless such a purchase is an emergency. Department head shall open the bids, record their contents, seek clarification from the vendor if necessary, summarize, and make a recommendation to the board. So basically, at this point, anything over $4,999 is going to have to go in front of the board no matter what. Okay. So I just wanted to make that clear, like, as we're looking at proposals, you know, and as we're looking at all these things, like, we do have a purchasing policy that does apply for these things, you know, whether it's work, whether it's, you know, purchases of equipment and things like that. It does have to go through that purchasing policy when we're using town funds to do it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that, or thoughts, anything? Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page there, because I know it tends to get muddy when people are looking at outside projects and you know, promising work to certain vendors, and we just got to make sure that we remember that anything over that dollar amount, we are going to have to, you know, at least get some written bids for. That doesn't mean, you know, that we can't end up going with the vendor who's quoted the, you know, the work initially, but we do need to get multiple bids. And a common misconception about how the bid process or RFP process works is that the town always goes with the lowest bid. That's not necessarily true. You know, obviously we want to try to save some money, but we also want to make sure the project is being done or purchased, or the, you know, the equipment we're purchasing meets the specs of what we need it to do. So it's not always a bottom of the barrel going with the cheapest option. So don't be concerned there. Another common misconception about this, you know, when things go out to this purchasing policy, or when things go out to RFP, is that it takes forever. That is not true, especially with the way that Shannon and I like to get things pushed through and finished. You know, we had somebody selected and working on the website for the town, which is one of the biggest RFPs that we had done to date. We had them working on that in less than a month. So it with a little bit of foresight, we can get it through this process and make sure that it's done correctly and transparently, and cover all our bases, and we don't have to take a ton of time to do it. Okay. So I wanted to touch base on that a little bit, because we, you know, we're coming into some larger projects and things like that, and some bigger spends eventually. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page with that moving forward. So there's no questions on that after our little chat. All right, perfect. Okay, moving on to our town forest dedication update. So one of the first recommendation, well, actually the first recommendation that you guys made to the Dover Select Board was that we rename the Dover Town Forest to the Dover Town Forest and Philip J. Bartlett Jr. Recreation Area. Okay. We got our plaque. We got all the information for the plaque put together. That was put together by Andy, who was close with Phil, as well as Phil's family. It came out really, really nice. We have ordered the bronze plaque. That's a couple of weeks out at this point, but we did receive what they call a ceremony plaque, which is basically the bronze plaque, but on aluminum. Okay. So we have that to do the ceremony with. We have ordered our sign, which went through the Dover Select Board last week. We got that approved. If anybody wants to see what that looks like, it's approximately, Shannon, it was 3 by 6, correct?
Yeah, 6.5 feet wide and about 3 feet tall, and it'll be mounted on 4-foot posts.
Yeah. And then, you know, obviously on the top, nice big Dover Town Forest, and then underneath, and Philip Bartlett Recreation Area, all the words that we decided were going to be added when we made the recommendation to rename the property. So that's been ordered as well. If anybody wants to see what that sign looks like, just get a hold of Shannon or myself, and we can email you the proof that we were given. So the sign company's working on that. We did get a bunch of bids on that, even though it did come in under that, you know, spending policy. We got some bids anyway. And we ended up with a sign that's going to look really great. So as those things happen, we're hoping for the sign. I think they said like 8 weeks, maybe, or 6 weeks. Shannon?
So they're actually already in production.
Oh, awesome.
They got material and they're working on it, and I don't want to say it out loud, but I think we might have it within a month, but I don't want to say that too loudly in the universe.
Awesome. So the ultimate goal here, guys, is that, you know, we have had the town take care of, you know, the expansion of the parking lot up there, which was, you know, one of the goals that we had, just to kind of get it opened up a little bit more for that winter traffic. I know that the usership in the winter was climbing, and we were looking for more parking up there. So Travis and his guys have taken care of that for the most part. I think they have a little more smoothing to do, maybe 1 or 2 more piles to push around on that new section of the lot. But it's nice and open up there now for parking. We'll have that sign on the right-hand side of the road just as you come in. It'll be out of the right away there so that the plow's not going to hit it and things like that when they're plowing up to there. And then Travis is actually in the process of, he found a massive quartz rock, a nice big white quartz rock, well, boulder, not a rock, but a boulder that he's going to be moving up there with the town equipment and placing so that we can put that bronze plaque that we got for Phil on that boulder, just off of the parking lot there. It's going to be really nice tribute to Phil by the time everything is up there and done. So that's my update. I'm hoping that we get that signed pretty soon. Travis and his guys are going to put it in for us. We will go, once that sign is in, we will schedule with the family and with everybody else to get up there and do, obviously the town forest has been open quite a while, but kind of a ceremonial ribbon cutting and things like that. And, we'll use the aluminum plaque for that. And then when the bronze plaque comes in, my thought is that we donate that aluminum version of it to the family so that they have a copy of it as well. And we'll put our nice bronze plaque there on the boulder. Okay. Any questions on that? No. Okay. Tommy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. Was there once a plan to also have, give me a better word for structures at each side of the parking lot? Was that just kind of
A pavilion?
Pavilion, correct? Yeah. Is that still an idea floating around?
So honestly, I would love to see it up there.
Okay.
When I worked with Steve, your director, on the URSA grant, okay. One of the ideas was that there would be kind of a walkway, with like some SurePack off of that parking lot in either direction, that kind of led out to a pavilion that, had nice pack ground, whether it was SurePack or something underneath it. But to have an area, we weren't referring to it as a picnic area because actually in the URSA grant, they weren't going to fund any projects that had a picnic area. So we were referring to them as educational pavilions. So the idea was to have, those pavilions off of either side of that parking lot for those educational purposes. Like I know Steve and Sauvier is running that winter program up there. That cover might be nice to use when you have the kids up there to get undercover, like whether it's snowing or raining or any of those things. But even, for people who are just trying to utilize the property, I think it's a great idea. So we haven't, since the URSA grant didn't come through, we kind of moved forward with, the first pieces of that, which was like, okay, let's expand that parking lot. Let's get the signage up there and things like that. So we're kind of in that phase of it, but I'm absolutely on board with, working with, I think we probably, anything we install up there in terms of like structures and things like that has to go through the Conservation Commission. But I think if that's something we want to discuss, I'm on board with it. And I'd be happy to, get a plan together to put in front of them to say, hey, we really want to do this. And then, we can potentially get moving on. I mean, probably not this fall, right? Because it's probably going to snow tomorrow, even though it's like hot and muggy right now. But, I'm totally on board with that. I know that Steve through URSA, like when we had looked at that, we had already kind of gotten information on some of those pavilions and like what we thought was going to withstand, the winters and things up there. So we've already...
I've seen conceptual drawings, but either way, if it looked like a nice idea, if it's something that you're going to pursue, terrific. And if you need anything from us, let me know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I appreciate that, Tommy. Maybe we can take, if you guys are. Did we lose Tommy?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are. Jesus.
Yep.
No. So if you guys, because we were working on it together to begin with, like if you want to continue down that path, I'm totally on board with doing that, and let's make it happen because we've already kind of done the legwork on it. There's no reason not to keep it moving forward. Even though we didn't get that URSA grant, that was not all the money in the world to begin with. So I think we can totally still move forward with it. And, we had already kind of drawn that up with the maps and things like that when we did the URSA grant. So totally happy to do that. Why don't I'll get some more information on that together. Maybe we can take a look at that conceptual map that we put together that Steve had put together during that process at the next meeting. And we can, let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting and get that moving forward so that we can make a plan for the spring. Does that work?
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep. Julia, you have a question or a comment?
Just real quick question. So given that we're just waiting for the extra parking lot work and the big boulder to get up there, what are you thinking in terms of scheduling? Early October, mid-October?
So
For the
back to
ribbon
where I
cutting?
was saying, like, I want to wait
Yes.
till we have that sign up there so that we can kind of do it all at once, right? So like, we are thinking, if they're working on the sign and, hopefully are going to have this thing back in a month, really trying to get up there and do it before
Okay.
snow flies. So, end of October,
Okay,
something like that. We have to get the sign and we have to have the sign installed. And the boulder needs to be up there as well. We're
Okay.
probably not going to make the time frame to put the actual bronze plaque on the rock, but that's why we paid the extra $79.99 or whatever it was to have that ceremonial aluminum plaque sent, because that could be done almost immediately. And even that looks really great. So, we're really happy with being able to use that for the ceremony piece of it. And then I think it'll be really nice for the family to have, hang on the barn or something down the road there. Okay. If you want to see that sign, feel free to stop into the town office where, Shannon and I are there every day. I'm happy to show it to you, or I can email you a picture or whatever you want. Okay. Any other questions on the town forest piece? All right. Ridge project update. So I will start and then I'll turn it over to Tommy. So the town has been discussing our options in terms of, getting at least some type of parking there. I think there's an agreement at this point, even if it's not the entire parking lot, to get some spaces there so that as we start to look at work moving forward, we're going to have somewhere to get vehicles off of the road. It was kind of a request of the chief of police, and I think that the USFS listened to, and Travis as well with the road crew. And I think the USFS understands that that's something, as we're moving forward, that it's going to be important for us to at least be able to get 1 or 2 cars off of that main drag on Handle Road. So what's happened, all that's really happened with us at this point is I reached out based on the meeting we had when we did the walk around on the property. The Forest Service was going to get back to us by the end of the month to kind of let us know where they stood and what they were thinking with the parking lot. I think they're still kind of thinking through that process. I did touch base with them and they just wanted to take a look at those easements that we had drawn up from, the north and south. And then when they saw them, they said, oh yeah, we saw these. And actually the USFS has already signed off on them. So we're literally just kind of working through that piece there, and we'll touch base with SOBTA when we have more solid information about, what we're doing there. Tommy, as far as anything west of the parking lot, you had a bit of a written update, I think, that was written at the read at the last select board meeting.
Yeah, sure. So at the walkthrough, on, I guess that was September. Oh, no, that was August.
Right.
Anyway, God, it's flying. So yeah, at that walkabout in the forest with the USFS, we agreed that we would provide a update to the Dover Select Board on the 6th, and the update we provided, I'll just read it, and if anyone has any questions, feel free. The Ridge Trail landowner, the United States Forest Service, has asked SOBTA to build an RFP with a review then by VEMBA, Vermont Mountain Bike Association. SOBTA is currently writing the RFP, following the using the recommended template that the United States Forest Service gave us. SOBTA and USFS will discuss and review the draft at an upcoming meeting. I, Tom Oakley, the Ridge Project Chair for SOBTA, has reached out to Selectman Joe Mahan, who we were told is now going to be the contact and liaison for the Select Board. I reached out to open up a line of communication. Minor milestones will be regularly communicated with the selectmen, and our next major milestone will be communicated to the Select Board in the entirety. We'll make sure to be put on the agenda ahead of time.
You all set, Tommy?
Yes, I am.
Sarah, go ahead.
Tommy, just as an FYI, I told Joe that I was willing to be his alternate. So because sometimes his schedule is such that it can be difficult to reach him. So if you find that you're having trouble reaching Joe, or you guys aren't connecting, feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure it gets back to Joe as well.
Okay, Sarah, would it be a good practice then for all my communications? I did follow, I think you saw, I sent the entire board a communication in response to one of Joe's emails. would it make sense then to just keep you copied on all communications that I send to Joe?
Probably. I mean, unless, we go 6 months into it and Joe's all over it and you never have a problem reaching him. But I do know that even for select board meetings, sometimes it's hard to pin him down.
Okay,
Um,
terrific. I
And
appreciate
when I
that.
said, do you want an alternate? He's like, oh God, yes. So
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah.
And Mike, I know it got called the Ridge Trail. We were referring to the Ridge Project, not the Ridge Trail proper.
Yeah, I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
Okay, I just figured before it came out, we would.
No, I know. I was laughing more about the whole alternate thing. Remember the alternate discussion and the policy about alternates?
Yeah, no, we got alternates all over the place. It's good stuff. Any other questions for myself or Tommy on anything with the Ridge Project? Awesome. Tommy, thank you guys for, digging in on that RFP. Appreciate it. Excited to see that moving forward. So good stuff. Okay. Moving right along. An update on the Route 100 recreation area. Okay. So I know that we as a group had decided to make a recommendation to the select board that we move forward with the project at, between 171 Route 100 and formerly the Dover Forge. The select board has decided not at this time to move forward with that project. I think there were some concerns. There's quite a few concerns, and I think in terms of the land ownership and what that lease looks like, and adding more employees to the payroll and maintenance and repairs and loss prevention, and there was a lot of things that were would obviously need a lot of research before I think the board felt comfortable, moving forward with that project. I would like to make it very clear that the town and my department are very much in favor of that type of project. Okay. And I think the misconception here is that we don't want to see something like that happen. And that's absolutely not the case. It's just that we need to be a little more realistic, I think, about the timeline for something like that to be implemented. Obviously we have projects that have been in the pipeline here for a couple of years, and we're literally on the cusp of breaking ground on, i.e. Horace Hill, potentially, other projects. We'd like to, depending on what happens on the Ridge project, hopefully, be involved with that and hopefully be able to be a part of helping make that happen. Whether financially or whatever. So, we can't ignore the fact that a lot of those funds have already been allocated for those projects, and we can't spend all of the 1% money all at once. So I think it was a situation where we had, myself and a number of board members, I think, had tried to convince Tripp, like, hey, let's bring it in and phase it out a little bit and make this a little more palatable for, the budget and how all of this could possibly work. And I think it was full steam ahead at that point, and let's do it all at once. And it didn't end up going through that way. I think there is enough interest in a project like this that obviously we're not shutting any doors. We just need to have realistic conversations and realistic expectations about timelines and how those things get implemented. So I absolutely admire the amount of work and dedication that Tripp put into, gathering all of that information for that project. I know that it's a massive lift on his part. So kudos to him for doing the work and for making the effort. And again, it's not, in my mind, it is not all for naught. It's just not for right now. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that or what transpired to get us here? Perfect. Patricia.
So I guess I didn't know about that decision, and I'm wondering if there isn't like even a little increment that can be started, or it's all about landowner possession.
Yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
Patricia, I think the thing is the board didn't actually vote it down. We didn't vote at all. Nobody made the motion. I think that if we could get a proposal back that was phased more appropriately, where we could start to think about things. But in going down the road, one of the things that I realized and I'll just speak for myself, is because that development that he's proposing is on 2 separate parcels. Even with right of first refusal, we're not talking about buying the land, we're talking about buying Dover Forge and the land, or buying the Little Flower, what was the Little Flower restaurant, and the land. So those are big lifts. That's not, if we were buying a lot, I think that would be something that, or if we had right of first refusal on a lot, that would make more sense. But we're talking about buying 2 commercially zoned buildings to maintain a rec park. And it's a shame because it's literally probably the only flat part of Dover, right? It's like the only flat land in the whole town. But if there was, you know, if Rich was amenable to doing some re-subdividing of that land and repackaging it, I think that's something that would certainly weigh in its favor. What I said to Tripp was, I thought it was a great idea, and I thought it was something that would really be could be very successful as a private enterprise, and that I was more than happy to. Oh, she's cute, Tommy. I was more than happy to help him with fundraising if he wanted to go in that direction. But I think, you know, when you start to think about, well, what is it going to cost the town? So say American Flatbread buys that building because they have a 3-year potential purchase in 3 years. Are we going to have to outbid American Flatbread, and then we're going to own that whole building and that, you know, all that other stuff? That becomes challenging. And then with the speed that Tripp wanted to have this happen, we were talking about hiring staff that would be town employees. They wouldn't be employed by the economic development department. They'd be employed by the town before we're even into our next budget cycle. So we're talking about adding anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 in salary and benefits to the town coffers. And we haven't even factored that into our budget. So that's where it becomes, you know, there were some things that, although the concept is great, I think when you start to really dig down into the details, you start to uncover some areas of concern. And areas where we're putting the town potentially in a very financially precarious position. You know, I don't know who here got their tax bill from Dover, but they all went up.
Yep.
Right. And are we going to then go out of our way to potentially add even more to the tax burden? So those were the things that got discussed.
Okay, I guess I just thought it was a lease situation. I didn't know it was the town buying all these.
No, it
so
is a
just-
lease.
Hold on, Sarah, I'll cover. So just to clarify here, it was going to be a lease, okay? But what was not super expressed in the conversation is that in order for there to be a lease, those properties would actually need to be subdivided by Rich to break off those sections that aren't building into like separate properties, okay? In order for that lease to really do what it was supposed to do. At that point, we would be given the right of first refusal, you know, after we'd made the improvements to the land. So we could potentially, if he could subdivide those pieces of property, which we don't even know that that's possible at this point, but if he can subdivide those pieces, then we could potentially have a lease, which would cover us with that, you know, right of first refusal, which means that if the land did ever go up for sale, that we would have rights to it first. And I think Tripp had laid it out so that like we would be able to purchase the land at the value of the land prior to our improvements. So it's not like we'd pay to put a park on there and then pay for a park. We'd pay for the land that the park was on. So that was a piece of it that I think, you know, was definitely a hang up for the board. You know, I don't want to speak for them, but it's one of the issues that came up. The addition of you know, expenses to the town taxpayers, I think, was another thing, because people don't realize that after something like that is done, that it comes off of the 1% books and then is covered by the taxpayers.
Yeah, no, I concur.
Like the town park, you know, we bought that, I believe, with 1% money. But, you know, once it was implemented, now it is maintained by the Dover taxpayers. So there's, you know, like I said, just a couple of things. we're not closing, the door has not been closed. Like Sarah said, no vote was made. No, he wasn't given a no. It was just, not right now and not in this fashion. So what, would love to see, like Sarah said, a proposal for maybe a more phased implementation. Every one of those things, we looked at in the documentation that Tripp sent this group and then again to the select board, every one of those things is something that was, for the most part, covered in that Weston and Sampson plan. So we know that there are things that we need. We just need to make sure that we're doing them correctly, and that 5 years down the road, we don't have a town full of people saying, why in God's name did you do that? You know what I'm saying? Because it's potentially a logistical nightmare. And I think that's, until we have a better idea of what that all looks like and how those phases work together to complete the whole, I think, it's just not going to work the way it was initially proposed. Okay.
Cool.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Horace Hill update. So on Tuesday night, our board and board members from SOBTA, Tom,
Hey, you skipped one.
oh, I did.
Yep.
Oh, Hathaway Trail. Also on Tuesday night, we're going to be having a brief conversation, recommending the purchase of those gates to the select board. As I said at the last meeting, please be prepared for them to, it's going to start the conversation about what needs to happen, but I don't expect them to hop on purchasing 8 gates at this meeting, just because we don't have that ordinance in place and we don't have that policy under the ordinance that would allow us to even close those gates. But I think your recommendation to move forward with the gates will at least get them talking about the proposed ordinance and then proposed policy to go under it to get that thing taken care of. So, we're getting, like I said, closer to winter. It may not exactly happen this fall, but we can at least get the conversation moving and hopefully get this taken care of in the spring. Okay. Paul.
Eric, so I have a quick question about that. My understanding is the trail part of Hathaway Trail is open to wheeled traffic now. Are we saying that the town's going to change that, limit it, and then put up the gates during the non-winter months?
So no, like what needs to happen in order for us, Hathaway Trail is a legal town trail. It is not a class 4 road. And because it is a legal town trail, we potentially have the authority, or not we, but the select board potentially has the authority to close that town trail, whether it be for certain parts of the year or like, prolific weather events or whatever they decide they want to be able to do. So what needs to happen on this piece is that an ordinance would need to be made by the select board, which allows them to make a closure to that legal town trail. Okay. So that's the overall ordinance. And that would actually cover every legal town trail in town. Okay. By making this ordinance. From under this ordinance, then we're talking about creating a specific policy as it pertains to Hathaway Trail. So that's when we say, okay, these gates on Hathaway Trail will be closed this month to this month, or after a severe weather event, or whatever it is that they decide, is best for the trail. I think we've had this talk so many times, and it's quite clear that the economic development department and the town don't want to spend $10,000 every couple of years to fix a massive mud hole for a group of people who aren't necessarily replenishing that 1% in that amount of time. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a deeper dive on the conversation about, the user groups on the trail. I know we've talked about it till we're blue in the face here, but we're at the point now where I think that now we put it in front of the select board to say, okay, here's what we're thinking and how this could potentially work. How do you want to move forward with it? And that's, the whole point of this trails committee is to kind of suss these things out to, get them in front of the board. So that's the idea here, is that we've had this talk so many times. And now it's time for us to put it in front of the board and let them move it or not.
Okay. And so it's to be determined when it would be closed.
Correct. That would be covered in the policy under the ordinance. So we still have to make an ordinance, which that is one of those municipality things that does not move at the speed of light, only because it can't. They would craft the ordinance. I believe then it's, reviewed by legal, and then it's put out for public comment for a certain amount of time. Excuse me for not knowing all of the specific rules of the ordinance, but it does need to be left out in public for public comment for a certain number of time, like amount of time. And then from there, they can vote to implement that ordinance. At that point, they can then start crafting the policy under the ordinance that is specific to Hathaway Trail. So we're a ways off. And like I said, they're probably not going to want to hop on buying 8 gates without, first having the greater conversation about it. But that's kind of where we are there. Does that help?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Sarah, I'll get to you in just a second. Let me get Mike Purcell first.
I'm just curious, what gives the town road crew the authority to post the roads during different seasons for weight limits, et cetera? And how is that different from a class 3 road than a class 4 road? Why does it need
because
I mean, those are public ways that prohibit certain kinds of vehicles on a seasonal basis.
that and don't quote me on this, but I believe that's something that comes straight from VLCT because it's the same across the board for all the towns on the different classes of roads. They'll post roads here in Newfane just the same as they do in Newfane, and I believe it's to do with the class of the road and the type of vehicle that's being used on it. I can do a little more research on that if you'd like, but that is my understanding at this point. Oh, I don't know what that means. Is that satisfactory, or do you want me? How do you want me to?
Not really, but if you're going to look into it, it just seems like they have the authority to regulate traffic, the kinds of traffic that goes on the roads, whether they be class 3 or class 4. So I'm not clear why it needs a special ordinance. I mean, clearly they don't, put a gate on a class 3 road, but they can prohibit weight limits, traffic, and close the road for the season, like, road is closed. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, let me look into that a little more. But I like VLCT. This guidance is coming directly from VLCT with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They said, because it's a town trail, this is how you address this. So we defer to them when it comes to this type of stuff because then it covers our butt, right? They have way more lawyers than we do. So when they give us an answer on something, we can say, well, they told us it was okay. So that's where we got that from, but I will do a deeper dive and figure out what it is that allows the town to close a road that is not a legal trail, to certain types of traffic. Okay. I'll get an answer for you. Sarah.
I was going to make some really annoying picky point, but it's not really important. So
Appreciated. Okay. All right. Any questions for you on Hathaway Trail? Keep an ear out, eye out. It's coming. Okay. The Horace Hill update. So our board, and then I believe Tommy's coming, or at least a representative of the executive board of CVTA on Tuesday.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, probably
So they'll
myself
be-
and Tim Shannon. Yeah.
Awesome. So Tim and Tommy will be joining myself and our select board to have a discussion on Tuesday night about the roles and responsibilities of moving forward with the project on Horace Hill. So once we kind of get that groundwork laid out, hoping to have the select board take a look at those RFPs that were put together that include the map that was worked on when we worked with SOVTA on the VOREC grant on Horace Hill, and the Act 250. I'm spacing on the jurisdictional opinion that we got back from Act 250 on that as well, saying that, hey, that thing you guys were talking about, you can do here. So that's included as well in that RFP, just to let people know that, what we have planned is feasible. There is pieces in there where, they have recommended that because there's a wetland, on the property, that we have the specialist come out for that piece of it. Once we have like the actual design out there before we actually break ground, they want that specialist to come out and just take a look to make sure we're not going right through the middle of that wetland. But fortunately, working with Steve, he's familiar enough with that stuff that he steered the bottom part of that trail on the property well away from that wetland, knowing that we don't want to get anywhere near it and open that can of worms. So, all set there. So we'll have that discussion Tuesday night and, hopefully get that RFP out so that we can break ground, hopefully in the spring. Mike Purcell.
I'm assuming that the discussion will include that loop connection,
Turn the camera off.
right? The loop connection to make a circle out of what's there, like the original tension.
Yes, Mike. So that'll go, like
Right.
anybody, we've talked, you and I talked about it, and I think we talked about it even at one of these meetings at one point, but yes, anybody responding to that RFP will know that that is part of the project, is to complete that loop. I will make sure of it. I don't need to skip it. Okay. Any other Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, Mike, I assume you're gonna be there anyway, but just so it's clear, the only thing that we're prepared to discuss, it's very simple. It's kind of just, what do you expect of us? What would you like to see us do? As you said, both our names are on that jurisdictional opinion. There's been quite a bit of work that's been done with that. So we're certainly, Mike, not going to be speaking about any specifics like that loop trail you're talking about. It's really just, moving forward, what are expectations? I guess I would recommend that if that's important to you, or if that's the conversation that's going to be had, that you bring that up at the meeting.
Yeah, and obviously any additions to what was already approved through that JO would go back in front of 250, like that additional trail to complete that loop would go back to 250 to make sure that we're good there too. So we're not gonna expand, on something that was already approved or at least conditionally approved. You know what I'm saying? Any other questions on the Horace Hill piece? Okay, Tommy, if just as a heads up to you, and I was going to shoot you and Tim an email, and I can still do that. Just to gather a basic idea of what you guys would like to see as your role, or how you guys want to be involved with the project. I don't want to assume that you want to be, anything about what it is that you want to be involved with what we ultimately end up doing. So any kind of understanding that you can provide us with, hey, we'd like to help with this, or we'd like to be a part of this planning decision or something like that. Any of that you would like to be a part of, definitely be prepared to share with us so that we can have that talk all at one time. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Perfect. Appreciate it. Do you need me to kick you an email, or are you good with that?
Emails, I guess, are just good as a paper trail, but
Absolutely.
Otherwise I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, I'll shoot an email to you and Tim tomorrow and copy everybody, and just make sure to say, hey, let's be prepared to have the conversation with what you guys would like to see out of the project and kind of where we're all headed. Okay, so I'll shoot you that email tomorrow.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Horace Hill? Perfect. Valley Trail A-. So working with the state, we are in a bit of a chicken and an egg here, and this is coming up again at a select board meeting in the very near future. So the state won't allow us to move forward with the easements until we've hired an engineer. Okay. The town, the select board, doesn't want us to hire an engineer until we have signed easements. So we're, again, chicken and egg, right? So very soon, probably not at this upcoming meeting, just because I think there's already a pretty full agenda, but I'm hoping at the first meeting in October, we're going to have a pretty serious conversation about how to get this thing moving forward and what to do with the project. Okay, so that's my update there. Unfortunately, I don't have more for you on it. It's just we kind of, this started with Ken Black, back when the Valley Trail first went in. And obviously that was a couple of years ago. So that, it's been through the end of Ken, all the way through when my predecessor was there, and now into me. So the state's like, look, we probably got to take a look at these engineering drawings again. And, we have to make decisions about what we're going to do to get that moving forward and keep that grant moving. So like I said, that'll probably end up at the first meeting in October. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So keep an eye out for that as well. Any questions on A-? Patricia. You're muted, I think. You muted? There you go.
The property owners are visibly selling their properties. So is that like the big thing, or
Property owners.
the
As
A1? The A1 is the Bogle Road
that just sold.
Tollgate Village is now up for sale too.
So that's for sale by owner, and I don't know that it's the whole property,
Oh,
to be
okay.
honest. So we're
Well, I was
like,
just wondering if that was one of the holdups.
no, because actually at this point, like for the first time probably ever, we actually have all three landowners in favor of this happening all at the same time. It's just that we need, in order to get easements approved by DOT in the state, now we need to have those new engineered, or at least updated engineering drawings done. Okay, so that's kind of where we are. So like I said, we're gonna get that in front of the select board and have a conversation with them about how we get this project moving forward based on, you know, that information. Okay.
But I thought we all voted on the engineering company. Nope.
Nope. So that was the project management company. So they're the people who've been working on this in the background for us, which is what DOT had requested because the project has been going on for so long. And they felt that the town had kind of let it slip a little bit. They requested that we get this project management company. So basically, Fuss and O'Neill has been doing their job and has these easements drafted, but they can't be approved, reviewed by DOT legal and approved for valuation by DOT until they've seen these updated engineered drawings. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. All right.
So Sarah, you're shaking your head, and Mike, I do see your hand.
It doesn't make sense, but it is what it is.
It's the state, right? I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
show me anything with the state that does make all the sense and I'll be shocked. Okay. Mike, go ahead.
I have a question that just popped into my head that relates to the Ridge project when we're done here, as well as, you know, that Ridge race stuff that I had proposed or discussed earlier. And if I can have a moment to ask what's going on, that would be great. Sorry. Can I do it now, or you want me to wait till we're finished?
Well, hold on a second. I guess we can add it. We didn't make a change or addition to the agenda. Sarah, what's the ruling on that?
We can't do anything actionable, but he can
No.
ask a question.
Okay, totally fair. All right. So before we move on to that, does anybody have any other questions on Trail A minus? Right on, easy group. Mike, go ahead.
It just sort of popped in my mind like a light bulb flickering or something, but Tom, in your discussions with the Ridge project, you know, or all those trails that are there, one of the things that was discussed at that meeting with the Forest Service was being able to use Shays Run that goes all the way to the Hermitage. And they had some mixed opinions because it sounded like we were interested in being able to provide emergency access up and down that trail. And at the moment, they had sort of had thoughts that, no, they were going to close off everything that connected that wasn't part of this new project. So I was curious if any discussions about that emergency access component has been discussed any further, or are they still sort of thinking about putting a gate up and closing it off?
Mike, nothing has been discussed. I know there's been a discussion with Mount Snow access, and my understanding is the United States Forest Service is reaching out directly to Mount Snow to discuss that. But no, there has not been, and I'm happy to. It's a good question. But now, question for you: how does that relate to the Ridge Run Race, or is that just separate?
No, that's just that route, that Shays Run, you know, that goes down below the bridge all the way to the Hermitage. Has just been a major cross-country ski route and a bike route that we used to use. And before they close it off and say you can't use this trail anymore, I was hoping that, you know, that rescue component that provided snowmobile access, et cetera, to the catch-up point for all the backcountry skiers would still be part of the discussion, you know, in an effort to just say, because right now for the Ridge race, you know, they would use that and the property owner permission would need to be granted. But, you know, it doesn't mean if they grant it, but the Forest Service has closed it off, it kind of makes it a moot point, so was just curious if there'd been any discussion about maintaining that for the skiing, for the biking, for everything, because that will lend, some support to, why folks would be inclined to grant permission to use that trail. But we can talk more about it. I just didn't know if it had come, and I didn't want to take liberties.
Yeah, no, has not been discussed.
Okay.
Mike, give me a call this week too let's touch base on the race. It's just been a minute since we talked, so let's do that. Okay. Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just question for, I love this idea of
Yeah.
the Ridge race. So I'm just a couple questions on it. Mike, would you, conceptually end or start, would it be at the Hermitage Club where the Ridge Trail goes in behind the lift there? Or would you be wanting to end at the Hermitage Inn or start? But what would be the points?
It depends on the Hermitage buy-in. The people at the inn are interested in, supporting the event. I don't know necessarily that the club is all over it yet. I mean, it would certainly has, marketing merits, et cetera, exposure. But ultimately, the original race went from the inn at a start all the way around the loop and then back to the inn. I mean, if the club wants to buy into a party that, celebrates, that's their thing. We haven't gotten that far yet.
Gotcha.
Tommy, is that something that SOBTA is interested in being a part of, like the conversation, or
I am personally.
Right on.
I'm not sure. I think it's a great idea, as I said. I guess though it's 3 interested parties that we would really need to get permission of.
Yep.
Mount Snow, the United States Forest Service, and either the Hermitage Inn or the Hermitage Club.
Yep.
So
And they were on board when I submitted the concept, a few years ago, with an event. The only problem they had at the time was they hadn't come up with a policy for fat bikes. But in today's world, we need permission from 9 other people along the route that we've been using for 40 years. And so I'm just trying to see if I can, whether the projects can help support the access for events like this, because ultimately it doesn't have to be a ski thing. It could be a cross country foot race. But if they're and maybe the Forest Service will just issue a license for that an event that day. But I was hoping that we could that they could be convinced that this route for emergency purposes at the very least should remain open and an access point, because realistically, I can't imagine folks just all piling in and going all the way up this trail to climb onto the Forest Service when they have a parking lot on Handle Road.
And honestly, Mike, from my recollection of that conversation, I don't think that they were not open to leaving that. I think they were at least somewhat in agreement that collection area was a necessity, because of the backcountry skiing area. I think their main concern in terms of closing what was on there is those user created trails, like the hiking trails and things like that, not necessarily that road piece. Maybe I took that wrong, but I don't think that was one of their larger concerns. I think it was the stuff coming out of Bears Crossing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. She just seemed to be like, we're just identify this fixed access point and close everything else down. It's like, ooh, ouch. And we mentioned that Shays Run thing, and they weren't open or weren't going to rule it out. But so I just was curious if any discussion had occurred related to that kind of retained access. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. All right. With that, I'm going to call it. Sorry, I promised you a short meeting and we took the whole time anyway, so bad on me. Next meeting, October 11th. If you have anything you want on the agenda, i.e. a ridge race, please get a hold of me prior to the meeting, and I'd be happy to add stuff to the agenda for you, okay? Or Shannon, either one of us, okay? So October 11th, same time, same place, all those good things. If you have any questions in the meantime, reach out to myself or Shannon. We're happy to help. And other than that, I need a motion to adjourn. Sarah makes a motion, Julia seconds, and everybody have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Okay,